This month's City Matters segment is all about traffic, as we will give you an inside look on the implementation of a new traffic enforcement model at the police department, city code changes regarding traffic controls in work zones, and quieting the sounds of wayside horns alerting traffic of approaching trains. It's all in store for you on Grand Island Television. Our first guest today is Police Captain Robert Fahldorf. He has been involved in launching new traffic enforcement strategies that not only fight crime, but also help reduce crashes and traffic violations. We welcome Captain Robert Fahldorf back to the studio today. Thanks for joining us again.
Yes, thank you, Wendy.
It's been a while, so it's nice to have you back down here.
Good to be back down.
Well, I know you're always busy, but you especially had a busy month last month with a new program that you're getting ready to implement and that you've started. Can you tell us what the name of that is and a little bit about why you started?
Yes, the program we're starting, or did start February 1st in the police department, is called DDACS, and that stands for Data-Driven Approach to Crime and Traffic Safety. And essentially what it is a law enforcement location-based model, and it was brought to us initially by a representative with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, and it's kind of a joint effort between NHTSA and two additional federal agencies, and they have essentially brought it to police departments across the United States for implementation.
So did you just visit with them a little bit about what that program was about and thought it was something maybe that would fit with your department, or how did that all work out?
Yeah, he contacted our agency, and we thought it'd be a good idea to look into it at least, and he came to our department and gave a presentation to our administrative staff, and we thought that it would be something we would like to look at doing. So after that, we put a committee together, myself and 3 sergeants, and started looking at some crime data and traffic crash data, and essentially that's what DDACS is. You're looking at your crime data and your traffic data, merging that together to identify locations throughout the city to implement the DDACS program.
So is this program one that is pretty new to our local agencies across the nation, or is it something that's been around a long time?
It's fairly new. I'm not sure there's any other agencies in Nebraska that have actually done DDACS. I know there's agencies in the Kansas City area that have done it with great success. I believe they've decreased their crime rate by as much as 15 to 20% using the DDACS program.
So are you implementing a model like this into your daily routine there with the officers, or is this something in addition to it, or how's this going to work?
This will actually be along with their regular patrol, and what we did is we identified 3 different hot spots or high crime and high traffic data crash areas, and we told our officers to go into these hot spots or high crime areas and to work aggressive patrol, and it's directed patrol, and they spend we'd like to have them spend 20 minutes in each hot spot area per 12-hour shift. So actually we get 2 hours of coverage with the patrol throughout a 24-hour period.
Now, are those hot spots a secret, or have you announced where those are, and can you tell us where they're at?
Sure, we've released information on the hot spots, and 2 of the hot spots are north of 4th Street. They're kind of side by side. One kind of is bounded by 4th Street and 10th Street and Broadwell and Eddy Street, and the second hot spot is right next to that, bounded by Eddy Street, Sycamore Street, 4th Street, and 10th Street. And then the third hot spot is south of the UP tracks, and it essentially is bounded by Sycamore Street, Broadwell Avenue, South Front Street, and 1st Street.
And just to clarify, how did you again determine those? Was that on data you had collected the last year, or how was that?
Yeah, through our records management system, we have a new module called PIN mapping, and it's essentially geo-based, and we worked a lot with Grand Island IT department. They provide us a lot of information for the PIN mapping, and we looked at 1 year back on crime data and 2 years back on traffic crash data. And essentially what you do is you PIN map the crime data and the traffic data, and it identifies areas of high crime area and high traffic crash area, and those are the areas you want to look at pinpointing for your DDAC enforcement.
So on getting this program launched, did you have other people you had to work with besides IT, or what was all involved in that?
Well, we really didn't have to work with anyone additional. It's just we made presentations to our officers and let them know what was involved there. The NHTSA representative, we did want to make sure that we advertised this, that we had other stakeholders or partners that may be affected by it, the county attorney's office, the city attorney, in case they would get additional information or additional referrals come through their offices. So we wanted to make sure that we had the stakeholders in place that may be affected by it.
And how did the first month or so go? How's it been going?
It's gone well so far. We knew there would be times when we were too busy to work the areas, but the officers have been pretty diligent and pretty effective in getting into the areas. We really won't have an idea of how effective it is for another 2 or 3 months. We'll sit down and look at the data, and after about 3 months, and DDACS will run for, in these 3 hotspots, a 6-month time frame. But you always want to sit down and look at your areas and analyze your areas to see how effective it is. So after 3 months, we'll compare the data from this year to the data from last year to see the impact on the crime rate and see how the decrease has come along.
So in these hotspots you talked about, you have some concentrated effort at certain times there. Does that mean other parts of our community are not going to be as well patrolled, or how are you balancing all that?
No, we will still cover other areas of the city. This isn't directed patrol just for those certain areas. So we realize that we're going to have issues in other areas of the city, not just the hotspot areas. And essentially when we were given this presentation, the representative said that officers will actually become a little more enthused about traffic enforcement in other areas, simply because they're going into the DDACT areas and do effective enforcement there, and they will see that the impact is a positive impact, so they will increase their enforcement efforts in other areas of the city.
So have you had to switch some shifts around, or have officers had to work additional hours, or you've just been able to maintain all that? It sounds like a lot.
Yeah, we actually want to maintain it with the personnel we have working the streets. So we have a day shift and we have a night shift, and we also have an overlap shift. And we really want the day shift and night shifts to work as much as possible. And if they're not able to hit the hotspot areas, then we have our overlap shift that generally works from 3 p.m. to 1 a.m. We'll come in and cover for what hasn't been covered by the day shift and night shifts.
And I know you mentioned earlier that we won't know for a few months exactly, for comparisons of data and stuff, but what type of data does this program allow you to gather?
Well, we really looked at just a small portion of criminal data. If we had looked at all the crime within the city, we would not be able to actually pin map that effectively. So we wanted to look at more of the severe criminal activity, maybe your assaults with firearms, your assaults with weapons. We did throw in DUIs, MIPs, your criminal mischiefs. Want to have an idea of where the criminal mischiefs are occurring, and that could include graffiti, vehicles being shot, thefts from vehicles, and then gang activity we included in the crime data as well.
So once you're going to be able to get this data, maybe in 3 or 4 months or whatever it is, you're going to then use that for patrol shifts and to figure out where enforcement needs to go, or what will you be doing with that?
We will we'll run the DDACS for the full 6 months in the hotspot areas that are chosen, but what this will allow us to do is after the initial 6 months, we're hoping that our hotspots will change. So we're looking for a decrease in criminal activity in the hotspots we've worked. Typically in the DDAC communities where this has been real effective, they have not seen that crime has been moved from one area to another, but we may see a decrease in one area and look at other areas where we need to effectively do the DDAC enforcement to see if we can lower crime rates in those areas as well.
So Captain Fahldorf, is this a program that you plan on continuing even after you've done your first 6 months of hotspots, or what's your plans for that?
Yeah, this is a program we will probably run indefinitely, and we'll look at the first 6 months and look at the impact. I don't know of any communities where DDACS has been done where it's been a failure. It's it's been positive in all the communities, and all the communities have seen crime reduction where it has been implemented.
So it's interesting that you said you're actually hoping your spots change then after 6 months. Is that right?
That's right. We expect that we will move to different hotspot locations. We probably could have had additional hotspot locations included in this first round. However, we decided we would do the 3 hotspots at this time, and then hopefully reduce crime in those areas and move it to other locations.
Well, and as I was researching this a little bit, I thought it was interesting, and I never really put the correlation together, that they talked about traffic enforcement is related directly to crimes, crashes, and traffic violations. So can you talk about how that correlation works with this new model that you're using?
Sure. We realize that criminals are mobile, and they do drive vehicles, and at times may be involved in traffic accidents or traffic violations. And before the Grand Island Police Department, prior to DDACS, we did a good job of traffic enforcement, and we did a good job of looking at crime enforcement also. However, DDACS, what it essentially does, it combines the two, and it allows us to identify these high crime and high traffic areas, and looking at results from other communities, it's been real effective when you combine the crime data and the traffic data and do directed enforcement in those areas.
And my final question for you today, Captain Fahldorf, is what does this program mean to our community and our citizens? How's that going to benefit us?
Well, DDACS essentially is a community policing effort, and you look at citizens wanting to feel safe within their communities, and we look at any type of program that will allow the community to feel safe. And enforcement such as this, where you're looking at a decrease in crime rates in every community where it's been enacted, that we feel that's very important, and the citizens to feel safe in their community.
Well, I appreciate you taking some time today and visiting with us about the new traffic enforcement module that you're implementing in your department, and it sounds like it's going to be really beneficial for our community, and just wish you the best of luck.
Well, thank you. We're looking forward to the results.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Traffic and safety continue to be 2 important priorities of the Public Works Department. Today in the studio we have Scott Grippenstraw, who will explain how these 2 items are directly related to several current initiatives within the department. We're glad to have Scott back in the studio today. I know as project manager your schedule is crazy busy, so I appreciate you coming in today and sharing with our citizens some updates on some of the projects you're working on.
Okay.
Well, the first topic I wanted to visit with you about today, Scott, was about some changes that were taking place in our city code recently regarding the temporary traffic control. And to begin with, before we got into some details of that, I just wanted you to explain what temporary traffic control, what that even means.
Well, temporary is compared to, permanent traffic control. I mean, permanent traffic control out there is your stop signs, your signals, anything that under normal driving operations you'll see permanent traffic control. Temporary is when there's something unusual happening out there. Might be a particular incident, might have to close a road for some reason, or more often than not, you see temporary traffic control in a construction work zone where you might have to do work right next to the driving lane. You might actually have to close one of the lanes. That's what you see, and the typical color that you have of temporary traffic control is orange, which to most motorists and most people in the public, they see that as construction ahead.
Okay. Well, just recently there's been some changes to the code that City Council approved. Can you tell us a little bit about what the key components of those changes are and maybe how it differs from what we used to have?
Well, this is related to Ordinance 9289 that was approved by the Council on February 8th. And in that ordinance, we revised the City Code Section 32 to include stricter requirements for temporary traffic control. And basically, this new revised City Code requires that any contractor, utility, or company working out there in a public street, that they need to install and maintain temporary traffic control in compliance with the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And that sounds like a mouthful, so I'll explain what the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, or MUTCD as I'll call it, is. And that is it's an 800-page document that's issued by the Federal Highway Administration that encompasses everything about traffic control, your signs, your pavement markings, your signals. and they are very specific in detail in that. For example, like signs, they go into details what the shapes ought to be, what the color, the font size, everything, so that there's uniformity across the United States in traffic control. So anybody driving around in the United States, when they come up to a stop sign and they see an octagon shape, and they see red background, they will stop without even thinking about it. And that is what uniformity gets you. Now, in terms of temporary traffic control, that's part 6 of the MUTCD, and that chapter provides very good guidance for installing safe and consistent work zone traffic control. And the primary benefit of the uniformity is safety. Safety for the people working within the work zone, and safety for the motorists traveling in and around that work zone.
So was the main reason for the revision safety concerns that we had, or we wanted to be in compliance with what that told you, or?
Yes, and that goes together. I mean, you know, for the motorists driving through a work zone, you got to give them adequate warning. You got to have the proper signs. You got to have the proper spacing. And for instance, if you got to close the lane, you need to put up the cones in a specific sequence at a specific length taper. You do all those things consistently, and you do improve safety by doing that. Now, some of the key components of that city code that we have, there are four items here. First of all, that approval of permits to work on the city street, they may be contingent upon a company's ability to demonstrate that they can provide, install, and maintain the temporary traffic control in accordance with the MUTCD. And secondly, the Director of Public Works or their representative will have the authority to direct corrective action if there is non-compliant temporary traffic control out there. Also, if temporary traffic control is in place for 4 hours and unattended, we're requiring the people responsible for installing those items to provide Public Works Director with a phone number where they can be reached on a 24-hour, 7-day basis. And fourthly, if the temporary traffic control is unattended for an extended period of time, we're requiring the people who install the items to perform inspections on it twice during the day and once during the night. So in case anything is hit or moved or stolen, that it will be replaced immediately, so that we can make sure that that work zone continues to be safe for the motorists.
So a lot of those things that you just mentioned, Scott, probably are not going to be I guess you'd say obvious to the average person driving in their vehicle, but there's things taking place behind the scenes to make sure they're safe. Is that kind of what's behind that?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
The Public Works, we're doing other things to, just to make sure that there's awareness of this new city code. We've sent out letters to contractors, to utilities, to other companies that that in their typical operations have to install temporary traffic control. But we're doing other things too. We added information on the city's website on the Streets Division page. Now, to get there, you would go to the Your Government Public Works section and then click on the City Streets Division. And then on that page on the left side, there is a temporary traffic control link. And on that link, you'll find information such as the recent ordinance. You'll find a link to Part 6 of the MUTCD. You also find a two-sheet plan set that shows several different typical temporary traffic control setups in an urban area.
So besides this change in city code, are there any other things that you're working on in the Public Works Department relating to work zone and temporary traffic controls?
Yes, we're continuing to do improvement within the city as well. Several employees from streets, utilities, or from different departments are attending some training put on by the Department of Roads to have temporary traffic control inspection certification. And we're also doing other things, such as when we let out a new project, we're including those updated temporary traffic control plans, and just continuing to move forward. We know that there will be a learning curve for a lot of people out there, but the more information we get out there and provide those proper type of traffic control setup details to people, I think we're going to see a lot of improvement coming up in the next year.
Well, let's switch gears and go on to another topic. A few months ago, we had you in the studio, Scott, and you talked to us a little bit about one of your projects, the Wasmer Detention Cell. And I wanted to visit with you and get some updates on that, but maybe we first might want to remind our viewers out there what that project is about.
Okay. Well, I think a lot of people are familiar with the recent Highway 30 widening project on West 2nd Street from Grant Street to Greenwich Avenue. And under that project, a new storm sewer system was constructed it was designed to outlet into the city's existing storm sewer system for drainage. And that existing system is inadequate.
Okay.
I know that there was improvements to take care of the problem of standing water. But as far as getting rid of the water, because the storm sewer that the drainage goes into is undersized, that section, especially around Broadwell Avenue, does flood pretty frequently, you know, just from not too heavy of a rain. So the Wasmer Detention Cell project is a project to construct new storm sewer from connections at Logan Street, which is 2 blocks west of Broadwell, and another connection at Broadwell Avenue, and another connection at Madison Avenue, 2 blocks east of Broadwell. All these new connections and new storm sewer will eventually take the drainage down to the Wasmer Detention Cell, which is at where the former Wasmer Elementary School was located at.
So is the main reason that this project is being done, is it for times of flooding or just even during regular rains, or how's it going to help our community?
Well, it will significantly reduce the problem with flooding that occurs. The new storm sewer pipe is significantly larger than the existing. I think it's 36 going up to possibly, 42 inch, which that's a pretty big diameter pipe to be constructed. So yeah, we should see significant improvement when we're completed with this project.
And I know recently you've been working hard on it, you've had some meetings. Can you catch us up to speed on how the project's going and what some updates are for us?
Yeah, so a little more history is that this project was originally put together, approved to receive federal aid in 2007 under the Surface Transportation Program funding source. Typically, that funding source provides for 80% through federal aid, and the remainder coming from 20% of federal funds. Now, this project, as it was going through design and getting close to being constructed, hit a couple snags. One of them was there was a lot of utility conflicts that were not addressed, and that really slowed down the progress of the project moving forward. The second thing is the Federal Highways increased their requirements for a federal aid project, increased their oversight. There's a lot more things that are now required to do for a federal aid project, so that also delayed the project. But the one thing that really kind of hit the project was that Federal Highways questioned the eligibility of this project for receiving federal aid. Recently, they come to the decision that if there's going to be federal aid for a drainage project, that it's only supposed to take waters from the highway itself or from a federal route, which would be Broadwell Avenue, and 1 block each side of it. Well, this particular drainage project includes areas that are outside of what they would call federal waters area. They'd be local waters. And so that kind of held it up for a while. Well, in December of 2010, we contracted Kirkham-Michael Associates to do a drainage study to determine exactly how much of the water is federal water and how much is local, so that we could get a decision from Federal Highways. That drainage study was completed, and on February 15th, the city, the Federal Highways, Kirkham-Michael, and Department of Roads, we all met to determine, make a decision on what level of participation Federal Highways could go with this project. And we did get a tentative decision, which leaves us with about a 60% federal aid and 40% local match for the funding, based upon how much water was actually federal and how much was coming off of local streets. And so at this point, we're waiting for that tentative decision to become a final decision.
How much are you anticipating the cost of a project like this would be?
Well, all the costs, our estimate right now, which includes the completing the design and the construction oversight, and all the construction is about $768,000. So the city's match, if the federal highway still agrees with a 60-40 split, will be about $307,000, which I have to say, fortunately, is less of a city match than what I estimated it would be prior to the study. So the study did certainly pay for itself. It's just moving forward. However, we still got to wait for that final decision from FHWA. We still need some work that needs to be done for these plans to address utility conflicts, to develop a traffic phasing plans, to put the package together so that it can be let to the Department of Roads letting system for advertising and award. And so we're not there yet, but we're trying to move forward as fast as we can, and which isn't that great.
So with all those things that you just said before construction can begin, do you have any idea when we might actually get to start the construction part of it? Or
my goal is to start construction in 2012, and I'll know a lot more in the months to come, getting the FHW decision and seeing what other hoops we have to jump through to move forward with the project.
Well, it sounds like you've had a good couple of meetings going and found out some information about the project at least. The third area and the final topic I wanted to visit with you about today, Scott, is the Quiet Zone Improvement Project. And this is one that has been around for a long time, and we always have lots of citizens wanting to know how we're doing on that. We're currently in phase 1 of the project, is that right?
That's phase 1, which will address the train horn noise in the downtown area of the Union Pacific Railroad corridor.
Okay, so tell me about what crossings are going to be involved in that and what's going to be part of that phase 1.
Okay. The crossings that we're talking about addressing in this first phase for the Quiet Zone are Walnut Street, Elm Street, Pine Street, and Oak Street. Now, to help people get their bearings straight, I think a lot of people are familiar with the Eddy Street underpass. Elm is just 2 blocks east of the Eddy Street underpass, and Walnut is 4 blocks east of the Eddy Street underpass. Now, for Pine and Oak, they are close to the Sycamore Street underpass. Pine is 1 block west of the Sycamore, and the Oak Street is 2 blocks east of Sycamore.
So now you mentioned what crossings would be involved in. Explain to me a little bit about how those are. 2 of them are different from the other 2, right? Elm and Walnut are different from Pine and Oak. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, the improvements that we have to do to satisfy the railroad's requirements so that they don't have to blow their train horns coming through the Quiet Zone are different. We're going to be treating Elm and Walnut by installing wayside horn systems.
Okay.
And what these wayside horns are, they're stationary horns that are positioned at the crossing and directed towards approaching traffic, and they'll sound an audible warning to approaching traffic or pedestrians to let them know of an oncoming train.
Is that sound going to be similar to what we hear now, or a little bit different?
No, it's significantly less of a noise impact than a train coming through.
Okay.
I think the sound range is only about 500 feet, and again, it's directed right towards traffic or pedestrians, as opposed to a train coming through, which their sound impact is as broad as 1,500 feet from the crossing, and certainly a lot longer of a stretch as they're approaching it. Now, for Pine and Oak, we'll be doing what the railroad calls supplementary safety measures. And what that will consist of is constructing a raised median, 100 foot long, each side of the approach at Pine and Oak, and also narrowing the street in advance of the crossing so that pedestrians or bicyclists, when they go across the crossing, that they're protected from crossing it by the crossing gate, and also that they are on those level concrete crossing pads that are at the tracks. That's part of the requirement. So the supplemental safety measures, by installing them, we won't have to have the wayside horns, and also the train horns won't be blown, so they'll be what they call silent crossings.
Okay, and just to clarify for our citizens out there, why can we do that at Elm and Walnut have to have the stationary horns, and Pine and Oak can be the silent?
The issues at Elm and Walnut are the siding tracks. Those tracks that are used by Union Pacific Railroad and by PV Grain to move cars. They are outside of where the crossing gates are at, and therefore outside of the quiet zone. And because of their proximity to the tracks, it's not possible to build the median, the raised median, right up to the crossing. So supplemental safety measures are not an option at those two crossings.
So you can't just go pick a crossing and say, I want to do this one silent, and it doesn't work that way.
It's quite a process, and you have to have the Union Pacific involved. You have to have an engineer familiar with the different type of processes for doing a quiet zone involved, and of course agreement with everybody to move forward, and that's where we're at with this project today.
Well, like I mentioned earlier, we call this often the Quiet Zone Improvement Project, but after visiting with you and some of your staff in your department, we talked that maybe it'd be better phrased being a quieter zone improvement project because of, well, some of the things we just talked about. But what are some reasons why this is not going to be, citizens can't expect it just to be completely quiet by those tracks?
It can't be completely quiet. Now I have to say this, it's going to be significantly quieter. I think our current estimate of trains coming through are 75 per day. So at 4 crossings, you multiply that by 4, you have 300 instances per day where a train has to sound its horn, to do the typical 15 to 20 second, blast sequence coming in. And by doing the quiet zone, that will be virtually eliminated. However, that the public needs to be aware that it certainly won't make it completely quiet. There's a lot of other things going to be occurring where it'll be necessary for the trains to sound their horn. As I mentioned, the siding tracks at Elm and Walnut, when PV Grain or UP are moving trains or cars across Elm Street or Walnut, they are still required to sound their horns just like they're approaching any typical crossing. And I visited with UP and PV, and they said that it may average up to 50 times per month where they're going to have to sounding horns at Elm and Walnut at each crossing, and during harvest time it will probably be possibly up to 150 times per month. Significantly quieter, but certainly not completely quiet. There's also other times where UP is required to sound their horns if there are workers on the tracks nearby. They have to give them a warning. If there's trespassers, people that are not, they're within railroad right-of-way and not, waiting at a crossing to cross, but, crossing the tracks at other locations, UP needs to sound their horns for them as well, which I was told by an area road manager for UP that could be up to 6 times per day. Other circumstances might be, well, there's an occasion where those wayside horn systems may fail, which Lincoln has wayside horns at one particular crossing, and they did have some issues with that. I believe they've improved quite a bit in terms of system not failing, but that is still a possibility. And then of course there is the train engineer's discretion. If they're coming up to a crossing, which they're aware is supposed to be a silent or wayside horn crossing, and they see a pedestrian approaching that crossing quickly or a car too close, they will have to sound their horns. So significant improvement, but totally quiet, absolutely not, can't be done. But I think in terms of quality of life, that people are going to be really happy when we do get the project completed and get those train horns silenced.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up some of those reasons that you might hear the horns, because I didn't think about a lot of those. It's not just when the train's coming through that they need to do that. Do you have any idea what the estimated cost of this phase 1 is going to be, and are we getting any funding, outside funding to help with it?
Well, the cost for this phase 1 is $590,000.
So it's
rather
significant.
expensive. But we are receiving a $140,000 match from the Community Redevelopment Authority, and so we do plan on getting this completed in 2012. We still got a lot of coordination work that we have to do with the Union Pacific Railroad, getting agreements finished out, and some more engineering that needs to be done for the plans. And
so you're hoping to have it completed in?
Yes, hoping to have it completed in fall of 2012.
Okay.
We mentioned this is phase 1. Phase 2 for a quiet zone that is being considered, hasn't started yet, is to quiet or make quieter the crossings at Lincoln Avenue, Broadwell Avenue, and Custer Blaine there towards the western part of the city. And that estimate for that is $470,000, of which CRA I think was going to be matching with about $130,000 of that. And that, to do a quiet zone is a 3-year process. And that one, sorry, it hasn't even started yet.
So we have a ways to wait for that one.
Be patient.
Well, why do you feel a project like this is so important not only to our business owners downtown and our residents, but just our community in general? Why do you think a project like this needs to happen?
I guess, you know, the thoughts that are coming to my head is it seems that more recently people are more aware of the train horns. I don't know what the issue is.
It's
just
been that way.
It just seems that way. I don't know what it is, but I do know this, is that the Federal Railroad Administration, they do have a requirement that trains are supposed to have their horns are supposed to be 96 decibel to 110 decibel level. And I assume since that ruling that train engineers, the railroad companies probably keep it towards the high end of that range, because I don't think you ever get sued for having a train horn be too loud if there ever is a train and car collision incident. If it's too quiet, yeah, that you would imagine that the railroad would be set for a lot of trouble with liability there. So they may be, you know, recently towards the top end of that decibel level, and the range of noise levels on the decibel chart, if you get up to 115, that's the sound of a power saw at 3 foot. If you get any higher to that, then you're at a loud rock concert. If you get 125 decibel, well, that's the pain threshold. So train horns, yes, they're very loud, and people notice those. And probably a lot of times they just wish they'd go away. So over the last years, as this has been moving forward, I think the patience level is, you know, people are reaching their peak on that too. But it is a quality of life issue, and for downtown with revitalization and all the efforts that are going on down there, you know, a lot of people are voicing their concerns that they would like that train horn noise to be significantly reduced, and we hope to get her done.
Well, Scott, we enjoyed having you in the studio, and good luck with all these projects. And I know our viewers out there really appreciate you taking the time to give us an update on what you've been working on. And guess what? I'll have you back in a few months again to give me some more updates on the projects that you're working on.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you. After viewing our segment today, we hope you are now aware of some new ways that the Police and Public Works Department are working to ensure a safer community for all of us to enjoy. Thanks for joining us today on the March City Matters segment.